Welcome to another episode of Health, the State of Well-Being. I am here with Kelsey, better known as No Reason to Be Vegan on social media. And so I decided to sit down and have a chat with Kelsey because on Instagram and social media, she posts a lot of information about negative or the negative connotations of a vegan diet. And I always wonder, like, where did she get all this information from? So I decided to reach out to her and just kind of pick her brain. And I also decided that it was really good for her to kind of share her story and give us some insight on who she is, why she does what she does. So, Kelsey, how's it going?
It's great. How are you doing?
Good, good. I'm excited about this.
Me too.
So, you had some, we talked a little bit about your health issues. And so, what are some of the issues that you dealt with personally as far as your health?
So I would say I didn't really have like health issues that were a huge concern to me until after going vegan. Um, when I was 14, I was kind of just the typical like young girl who was trying to eat healthy and be thin and have the figure that I wanted and look the way the women and media did on TV and in magazines. And I followed what I thought was a pretty healthy diet according to what I'd been taught. It was things like healthy cereal with skim milk in the morning for breakfast, that sort of thing. And I felt I wasn't overindulging, but I wasn't obtaining the figure that I wanted. So I thought, well, in order to get there, I must just have to starve myself. So that is what I did for a couple of months during the summer. When I was 14, I dropped a lot of weight really quickly. I don't know if I would call it a full-blown eating disorder, but it was, definitely getting there. And then what happens after you've starved yourself voluntarily for a period of time is you often develop binge eating disorder from that because you just lose control. Your body's like, I'm going to eat everything in sight because you're not giving me enough food.
Right.
So that's kind of what happened. And a lot of people go from anorexia to bulimia that way. I luckily didn't go down that route, but I pretty quickly gained back all of the weight I had lost, which was about 25 pounds when I didn't really have that much to lose to begin with. So especially the way I was going about it, I dropped along with all that weight, you lose a lot of muscle. So then once I gained all that weight back, I gained it back mostly as fat and eating a lot of processed junk foods and things like that. So pretty much set myself up metabolically to be in a really like precarious place at that point. And then I went vegan shortly after that. So that just kind of like kicked off some long-term health issues from there.
Okay. And so, do you think that the reason why you decided to eat the way you eat was simply because of, things you saw in magazines or TVs, or like what was some of the reasons why you did that?
Yeah, I think at the time I sort of felt like, well, that didn't work. I tried to do the like extreme dieting thing and that didn't work. And there was this perception, there still is this perception that vegans and vegetarians are just sort of thinner by default than the general public, just by nature of not eating meat. And that may be true for some people, but we definitely see a lot of people who gain weight going vegan. And that's what ended up happening to me. So yeah, that whole experiment didn't work out. I would say, my desire to be thinner and healthier was a big part of the decision to go vegan, but I also was shown one of the classic vegan propaganda documentaries that had the whole argument laid out for me as far as animal welfare, the environment, and of course, you're going to get heart disease and that sort of thing. So it just seemed like a no-brainer to me when I was a teenager. But then problems very quickly developed once I started doing that.
So, what was the age range where you decided to say, okay, I'm going to try this vegan thing?
So it probably was a few months before my 15th birthday.
Okay, and how long, what was the period there? So, you started, and then how long did you go vegan for?
A really short period of time relative to a lot of the ex-vegan stories that are out there. I would say it was between 4 and 5 months before I couldn't do it anymore.
Oh, wow. So, nowadays, when I make videos or when other people comment on some of the content that I make, I hear people say, not hear, but I see some of the comments, they say, oh, you just weren't doing it right. What do you
Yeah,
think of that statement?
that is the classic vegan response, is that you weren't doing it right. And the other thing you'll hear is that you were never really vegan to begin with. And I mean, veganism, you'll hear people say that it's cult-like, and that because it legitimately checks all the boxes for a cult. And one of those things is that the current members have to protect their ideology at all costs. So any defectors, anybody that didn't have success with the diet, it's their fault. It's not the fault of the diet. It's not the fault of the ideology. You cannot question it. It's foolproof. If you suffered on it, it's because you did it wrong.
Right.
Or that you just didn't care about the animals enough. You never really had those ethics that you claim to have to begin with, because if you did, how could you ever go back on them? Those are the two classic vegan arguments that you'll hear from most vegans. And I get where they're coming from, because they just can't accept that there are an overwhelming amount of people who've had really, really negative and severe health consequences because of this diet.
No, that's a good point. And it's the saying that, when you do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, it's insanity, right? And
Right.
so a lot of people ignore. So I'll use myself as an example, right? So when I was on a plant-based vegan diet, I had symptoms that were, at the time, I just assumed that they were a part of the process and I ignored them, right? And
Mm.
I made excuses for whatever those things were because I believed in my ideology.
It's detoxing, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the brain fog and not having the mental clarity, I kept saying to myself, oh, I just need to fast more or eat more fruits or wait a longer period of time, and then eventually I'll get better.
Mhm.
And so yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So you did that for a few months, 4 months ish, and then what happened?
It was a struggle for me from day one, I would say. And I think there's a lot of variation in how long someone can last on a vegan diet. And that comes down to kind of where their health is when they begin the diet. I was already kind of in a depleted state from what I had done to myself the previous like 9 months or whatever. Um, if you are eating a really whole food diet that's not including a lot of the replacement foods and that sort of thing, you can last. And of course, supplementing, like, everything you could possibly supplement,
Yeah.
you can last quite a long time, many like decades. People last before they end up finally admitting this isn't working and their health's not going great. But as a teenager, that the way to do it right supposedly really wasn't emphasized to me. It was just sort of like, you just go vegan and you just, whatever you're currently eating, you just replace those meat and dairy items with like the vegan version. And so, and if you're not doing that, then what you're left with is just like fruit, vegetables, bread, like things that are just not a satisfying meal, especially as a teenager, not knowing how to cook anything. So I would rely on those replacement foods because I was just hungry all the time, all day
Oh,
long, like never felt satisfied, but felt bloated. I'd try to eat to fill my stomach and just be bloated, but not satisfied. Asked a vegan friend, how do you deal with this? He told me this is just what it is. You just deal with it.
what it is.
I'm going, that should have really been a huge red flag for me at the time. But there's just this overwhelming sort of sense that, like, if you can't do it, that's your problem. Like, you're weak. You're too weak. You don't care about the cause enough. It's like a competition to see who can deprive themselves the best. So anyway, long story short, as I'm going up, like as time is passing, I'm not losing weight, because how do you lose weight when you're just so hungry all the time? I was steadily gaining weight. And then within a very short period of time, a couple of weeks, I just had the worst skin breakout I've ever had in my life. Just went from having like kind of normal teenage few zits here and there to just like full blown acne to the point that I ended up being prescribed Accutane like 6 months later. So it didn't really make the connection at the time that that was directly at the same time that I went vegan and started eating all these soy products, probably a lot more vegetable oil than I was already eating. It wasn't until 5 years later that I kind of stumbled across some information on the internet where the light bulb just went off, and I was like, wow, like that is when all of this started. And I saw people, that's kind of when I found out about Weston A. Price and low carb, high fat dieting, and people were clearing their skin that way. I found it on an acne.org message board.
Oh, wow.
And that just like sort of started the whole rabbit hole for me. And that was 14 years ago. So I've had a lot of time to just dig into this topic, and it's, you know, I've just further and further confirmed those beliefs over that time.
Okay, so yeah, that was a while ago.
Yeah.
So I'm sure within that period, you've done a lot of research. Like you said, you read Weston A. Price's book and other things. And so that's something that a lot of people who kind of had similar issues can relate to, like myself. Even though it was a short period of time, then this is something that a lot of people don't realize, just simply because we don't read enough, we don't do enough research. Everybody's body is different. Everybody's gut health is different.
Mm-hmm.
You've been eating a lot of ultra processed foods and unhealthy foods from, you know, a young child to whatever age it is. Your gut's probably messed up.
Yeah, most of us.
Yeah, and so one person might go 5 years before they see some type of or experience some type of major problem, and another person might go 3-4 months and they're like, whoa, this is, you know, all this crazy stuff is happening. And so, you know, that's kind of the messed up thing about comparing, you know, like we said earlier, oh, you didn't do it right, or all this. Well, you just keep doing what you're doing, and eventually you're probably going to have the same story.
That's always my response to them is like, yeah, you'll see. You'll learn the hard way, just like we all do. There's a lot of stubbornness, I think, that runs in the vegan community. And, you know, everything I say about vegans, I'm saying about myself. I'm an ex-vegan.
Yep.
But you feel a lot of conviction and like the fact that you're right and you've just figured something out that no one else knows about. And there's that sort of holier than thou theme throughout the vegan community. And that's a big part of the reason why it's hard to like break through, because it's not just about nutrition. It's like this whole identity.
Yeah, no, you have a point. It's not really about nutrition. You know, people message me all the time. They're like, hey, you know, you should check this guy out or check this person out. They know what they're talking about. And I'm like, they know what they're talking about, but you didn't take the time to really research and look into what they're talking about. They're just this guru online, and you're like, oh, it sounds good, and I'm going to do it.
It's really, I think, human nature. People don't want to find the answers for themselves. They want it to be handed to them, and they want to believe there's someone out there that is like someone they really respect, that's really smart, and like for sure this person wouldn't mislead me, they wouldn't be wrong about things. And it's like, that person doesn't exist. Every guru out there, I don't care if they're a doctor, I don't care if they've been doing this for decades, all of them say things that are wrong. They all disagree with each other. How can they all disagree and all be right? You know, it's like, you have to just take the good, but be willing to be skeptical about everybody, even your favorite guru that you think is a genius. Like, question them, look into what they're saying. You would be really surprised what you will find.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's absolutely true. I was listening to someone the other day, and they were talking about fruits. And this is the exact word for word statement they said out of their mouth. They said that fruit has all the nutrients that the body needs. You can survive off of fruit. And I'm sitting there like,
I hear it all the time.
What are you talking about? First of all, that's a lie. It's not even a true statement, because there's so many nutrients that are not in fruit that the body needs. And so for you to say that so confidently, but it's a lie.
Well, they'll always say, well, what does meat have that plants don't have? Plants have everything you need. But then they'll also admit that you have to supplement B12. So there's just this huge cognitive dissonance where they will sit there and question you and grill you, going, plants have everything. What do they not have? Meanwhile, they literally know that plants don't have B12, but then they turn it around and go, well, animals don't have that either. They have to be supplemented with it. And they just, they really show how little they know about like the anatomy of these ruminant animals and just farming in general. And yeah, it's
No,
always the same argument over and over again.
right. I feel kind of heartbroken for the people who have no idea of what's coming. You know, they'll argue with you, and then I say, "Oh, so how long have you been vegan?" And they'll say, "Oh, I've been doing it for 2 months." And I'm like, "You have no idea what's coming."
Even the people that have been doing it for years, they're at year 10 or 12. Sometimes it takes till they get to year 20 before they're really ready to just let go of it. Lear Keith, who wrote The Vegetarian Myth, she was 20, had been vegan 20 years and had degenerative disc disease. Like her spine was literally deteriorating. And that was the point that she finally had to admit it wasn't working anymore. So imagine that, like dedicating 20 years of your life to this cause that you preach to a lot of people about and we're so sure of, and then having to go back on that and admit that you've actually, and then have this like probably really devastating realization of what you've done to your body for really no good reason. I know it's like it's a really hard psychological process to go through to get out of this. It is very much like leaving a cult for a reason. So as much as I argue with them and get frustrated with them and everything else, like I do understand what's going on a deeper level. And it is really sad, honestly.
It is. I was just talking to someone, I believe it was yesterday, and we were talking about um, how when you look at a lot of plant-based or vegan accounts, like I remember like 2 years ago, maybe 6 or 7 months ago, I would see a person at like maybe 19,000 followers. And then today they're at like 150, 200 something thousand followers. And it's like, man, they're really pushing this plant-based stuff.
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
Mhm.
great day, I could probably get maybe 100 followers, maybe 200 followers on a great day.
Mhm.
Um, and so you just times that times however many months, and you can clearly see like they are really pushing this stuff.
Oh yeah. I can tell with the hashtags that I will use. They will not push any hashtags that are anti-vegan, ex-vegan, don't go vegan. Like it's really interesting to see the way that different wording you use gets different results in the algorithm.
Hmm. So the content that you make, what's the driving? Well, I mean, I know this is, I don't want to say what's the driving force, but um, what's the reason why you decide to research and look into all these different articles and put them out there?
Well, I love to hear the theories that vegans and even like meat eaters who don't understand what I'm doing, what they come up with, which is usually that I work for the meat industry. My dad's a farmer or something. That I had my heart broken by a vegan. That's my favorite one. So, as I mentioned, I've been researching this stuff for such a long time, right? And like up until now, I had no way to really share it. I just didn't like I kind of thought, oh, maybe someday I'll make a YouTube channel, but I just didn't have a lot of motivation to really start doing it. Instagram is sort of a very like easy way to just kind of push out little bits of content. So, and I had a little bit of prior experience growing an Instagram account to like totally unrelated, but to promote an Airbnb business. So I kind of understood a little bit about just like the tips on how to grow the account, like using hashtags, posting at certain times of day, having good content, that sort of thing. So I just thought, okay, maybe I'll go about it this way. I'll just start an Instagram account, start putting this stuff out, see if it resonates with anyone. See, like, is there even a community that exists that will appreciate this content? And pretty quickly, I felt like there was, and I also felt like there was just an unlimited amount of this content because it's such a hot topic today. And there's people just constantly going vegan, having their health ruined, quitting, and stories about that coming out. And I just thought this all needs to be sort of consolidated and put in one place so people can really see like the weight of the evidence against veganism. One of the things that kind of like really just ticked me off and made me want to start this was I had a friend ask me about the Game Changers documentary and was like, what do you think about this? Is this something I should try? This seems really convincing. And so it was, it was like 18 years after I saw my vegan documentary on a VHS tape. And I just saw it. They won't stop. Like they're just changing their angle now, trying to make it seem like veganism is for like sporty, athletic, manly men instead of what they were pushing before. They're trying to rebrand it basically. I just was like, this is so annoying. And there's not a lot of prominent anti-vegan accounts on social media, at least not that I was aware of. So I just thought I would throw my hat in the ring and start putting this stuff out there since I already had this knowledge. I had a shitload of bookmarks saved and things that I just wanted to put to use, I guess, like just to share them with other people, see if that they could get some benefit from it. And been doing it for a little over 2 years now. And it's been really awesome to see the growth. It's been amazing to get the messages from people telling me that like content that you've shared helped me to convince my wife, or it helps convince them, or whatever. I know that it's been useful to some people, so that's worth it.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think for me, I love reading. And so if you tell me something, I could believe it. But when you show it to me, it makes a total different impact when I can actually read it myself and put the words in my brain. And I can be like, whoa, okay, let's compare. This is what I heard. This is what I read.
Yeah.
And so
and when you can see it, like you can see people's physical transformations, you can see them go from healthy looking to unhealthy, a couple years into the vegan diet, and then you see the reverse happening. And that's, we just have so many examples of that now. And when you see the vegan responses too, I like to share those because you kind of see a window into like their perspective on things. People can really see like the level of denial, the level of like angry, aggressive messages that they send me. And you just sort of see that these are like people that are really struggling. And it's like, it is that hangry behavior, like that's a biological thing that's happening.
No, it's true. I remember even myself, like how I responded on a vegan plant-based diet, how I thought on a vegan plant-based diet compared to the way I process things now, especially with having better mental clarity, having better memory where I'm holding on to stuff a lot better than I did prior. So yes, I agree. It's you can clearly see the anger and the frustration that comes out from that community.
The moods, like your moods are very much dependent on like your state of nourishment and what's going on with your gut bacteria. And I think people often experience just sort of like this relief feeling when they start eating meat and dairy again. It's like life just gets a little bit more pleasant and a little less dark and depressing. And they don't even really, a lot of people don't make the connection between those things. They just think if you're depressed, it's because of like events that are occurring in your life or in the world in general. And, everything's chaotic right now. So of course you'd be depressed, but you'd be amazed at how much what you're eating really it changes the way that you handle those different situations.
I agree. Also, saturated fat, cholesterol, the fats that we receive from the animal has a huge impact on the brain. Huge impact. It's amazing that within a week's time, when I got on, decided to add meat and dairy back to my diet, my brain fog went away. It was
Yeah.
immediately, right? And then my mental cognitude came back where I was a lot sharper. It didn't take like it wasn't like a stress for me to hold on to a bunch of information. And so, yeah, all of that correlates with what we need for our brain.
Hmm. Totally.
So, what's next? What do you have for the future? Is there you got any future plans for social media for helping other people out? What's going on?
Yeah, definitely. I don't really see myself stopping this anytime soon. I have been talking about starting a podcast and a YouTube channel for like a year now, but I'm definitely going to do it. I've committed to doing it. Like I know I'm taking forever on it, but that's just kind of how I go about some things. So that's starting soon. But part of the reason I've been so busy lately is I actually just um, got some land about a little over an hour outside of Houston. I have 10 acres and I'm setting that up over the next few months. I'll be out there full time this summer, but the plan is to raise food, um, pastured soy and corn free chicken and eggs, and then maybe some goats and who knows what else. But this is something I've wanted to do for a super long time, ever since I learned all about nutrition and where good food comes from, and realizing just how poor access most people have to this type of food, and how expensive it is and all that. So I just kind of want to put my money where my mouth is and like really get involved with this and see if this is something that I can do. And I'm really excited to get started with that. So my time is really being split between that and like I still work and have a life outside of that. So the podcast and everything, it just keeps getting pushed down, the priority list. But I have a ton of people in mind to interview that, want to share their stories of quitting veganism, what it did to them, how they're feeling now, and all that. And I just want to give these people a platform to share, just, like what you're doing. It's like the more we can talk about it and get it out into the public, the more people will realize. I know there are people that just have no clue that there's like this whole like community of millions of people literally that were vegan in the past, didn't have a good experience with it. It's not that they've done it wrong, it's that there's something fundamentally wrong with the diet itself.
Yeah, no. So you said you're gonna try. Well, you're already halfway there. You got the land.
I'm doing it. It's just I should say I'm going to try to get it out soon. It'll get out eventually, but like I would love to get started, and I said by like the end of January. It's now March. You'll see it. It's coming, I promise.
Got this. You got this. So, if in some, I'm gonna, I guess, start a closing. So in a closing, if you had the opportunity to talk to someone who were thinking about trying a plant-based or vegan diet, like what advice would you have for them right now?
Just that they really need to understand the other sides of the argument against it. A lot of people have no clue that they're shocked when they even find my account and they're like, what, there's people that dedicate this much time and energy to opposing veganism, because they think it's a harmless diet, and it's not. You really need to understand nutritionally what you're taking away from yourself and what the long-term consequences of that are likely to be. You also need to understand that you're not doing anything for animal welfare. And that's like that's a whole hour-long video that I could go into, but there's a lot of resources on my page. There's books out there. I'd highly recommend The Vegetarian Myth to anybody that is considering this. At least go into it informed. If you don't want to act like a cult member, understand the research on both sides before you make the decision. If you're unwilling to hear out the opposition and you're just blindly following something, that is very cult-like. So I think those people, it's just hard to reach in general. So I don't really like try to convert people like that. It's like people who are coming at this from a rational perspective and want to understand what the evidence really is. That's not being, the media certainly isn't talking about it. It's being left up to people like us to say, hey, what about this? Just hear those people out and hear what we have to say, and decide for yourself who you think is making the better argument.
That's pretty good. And so what about, someone who is currently vegan and they're experiencing a few things and they're thinking about whether or not it's good for them? What advice would you say, for someone that might be looking for an alternative?
I think those people that are still kind of clinging on to it, even though they're starting to experience those health issues, it's usually coming from a place of, I don't want to hurt animals. It's very much like an ethically motivated thing in my experience. Um, and what I have found helpful in that situation, at least with one person I talked to, was to just kind of show them the reality of what happens on a well-run regenerative farm, and how really well these animals are cared for, and how they really don't even know that their lives are being ended because it happens so quickly. It's like a death that, a human would wish for. It's like, it's completely humane. It happens instantly. They don't know what's going on. And it's like, is that not a better alternative to the animals that are being chopped up and poisoned and blown up in the field for your food? Like, once you kind of get to them on that level, then they start to say, okay, well, maybe I can eat some eggs from a family farm, and then maybe I can drink a glass of milk, and then they feel the health differences start kicking in. And then I think it's just a no-brainer from there.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty good. So I got to touch on this because you mentioned it, right? And
Mhm.
so when it comes to the animals that are harmed in the process of harvesting crops,
Mhm.
talk to me a little, or us a little bit, about that process. I know there's, well, I'll let you talk to that process.
Well, one of the biggest misconceptions that you always hear them say is that those are unintentional deaths. Those are just like an unintentional byproduct of driving a tractor through a field. They really don't understand much about what it takes to grow crops in general, which is exterminating everything that was existing in that field prior to you putting that field of crops in. So you're having to kill all the animals and destroy their homes so they can never come back. And then you have to now protect the food that you're growing, because all the animals around it are like, oh, a buffet, So now you have to kill any animal that's trying to come in there and eat that food, and keep killing them. You're also poisoning up the food chain, because they're using poison for a lot of these, like, mice and things like that. And then a hawk comes and eats the mouse's carcass, and then that gets poisoned. And that, it just like, so there's a ripple effect throughout the wildlife community around it. The ways they go about killing them are not humane, because there's no laws dictating that if you're killing crop pest animals, that it has to be, quick and painless, which is what's required by law for livestock. So a lot of them just get shot. Maybe they don't die right away. It's not like a kill shot. They like bleed out slowly in the field. It's not humane at all. So if you're strictly eating plants, all the animal deaths that are, the trail of blood leading from your plate is all like very brutal and inhumane killing of animals. And then I'm not certainly not advocating factory farming, but even in a factory farm, those animals are being killed quickly and painlessly as required by law. But they act like there's no third option, which is go find your local farmer. They're more accessible now than ever.
Okay.
Eatwild.com if you want to find one near you. You can literally go on the farm, see all the methods they're using, what they feed the animals, how they treat them, how they slaughter and process them, and you can contribute to the best life possible for these animals. If you are really in favor of animal welfare, that's the best option by far. Veganism doesn't even come close.
Good answer. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, because it's so cultish, when you think about it from the standpoint of, they show the rabbits and the chickens and you're petting, all this lovely scenery, but
Yeah.
they consider the wild rabbits, the mice, the squirrels, the foxes, the deers, the snakes, the bees, and I can keep going. These are all animals that get slaughtered as a byproduct of harvesting.
Mm-hmm. And I would take it one step further and say if vegans got their way and eliminated the animal agriculture industry, what happens to all the cows, chickens, pigs, all the domesticated livestock? They don't go live on a sanctuary somewhere. They become extinct very quickly because we no longer breed them. Nobody's making money off of them. No one's eating them. Do you think that the animals want their species to go extinct? Is that what's best for the animals? No, they want to keep going. They want to keep living. And to do that, they rely on us eating them and using them as resources. They don't exist without that. That's what we've bred them for. So the only real solution here is to give them the best life possible and slaughter them appropriately and painlessly, and stop pretending that we can force our bodies to become herbivores and that that's somehow a more humane option. It's just not on any level.
Not at all. Well, on that note, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story and have a conversation about health. And you got any last few words you want to share? Oh, one more thing. If someone's looking at this video and they have never heard of you or seen any of your content, where can they reach you at?
So Instagram, my handle is No Reason to Be Vegan. The number 2, the letter B. My YouTube is not. I have a channel, but there's nothing posted yet. But it's under the same name. I'm also on Twitter under the same name. If you just type that into Google, you'll pretty much find all of my platforms. I have a Reddit page as well. But yeah, so podcast will be out soon. It'll just be the standard like Apple and Spotify, I guess. But thank you so much for having me on, Kevin. This was really fun. Thank you for letting me tell my story.
Yes, you're welcome. All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right, see ya.
Bye.